Good morning and welcome to Transforming Love Community, our Sunday service. We're a channel that specializes in sharing content, information, wisdom, insight that helps people transform every area of your life, helping you to be your truest self. And we do that through emitting tremendous amounts of love and encourage you to love yourself fully for the totality of who you are. And so even as people are beginning to come in, we welcome the Holy Spirit into this place. We see Joe Harris is here. Greetings to you. We know that wherever you are, God is. We know that where Reverend Shaheerah is right now, as she's taking some time on vacation, we know that God is there. We know that the presence of God greeted us when we came into this place, that welcomed us here. We give great thanks for that. Armethea, good to see you this morning. Good to have you in the space. God bless you this morning. Thankful for J Love, who's working in the background, helping to make all of this possible. The Right Reverend Dr. Spencer A. Murray, good to see you this morning, my brother. Angel Fran, blessings to you on today. Just encourage you all to come in and breathe in the breath of God, that Ruach, breath, wind, spirit. Faith Jassy, good to see you this morning. As we come in, I know that we're in different places, some of us in different places of the city of Detroit and the surrounding areas, some of us in different places in the country, some of us even in different places in the world. T.L. Davis, peace and love to you. Kafi, peace and love to you, my sister. Joanna, peace and love to you and to your sister. Curly Conscious King, good to see you this morning. That was a nice, pleasant surprise for me. All of this love that's being sent your way. And even as we begin to filter our way in and make our way in, let us enter into a prayerful state where we're consciously recognizing that we're dwelling in the presence of God. The presence of God greeted us as we came in today. And so I'm going to ask that everybody just breathe in the light of God's love into your heart. This light of God's love that helps to transform our lives. And even as we're breathing in the breath of God, even as we're breathing in the light of God, even as we're breathing in the love of God, dear God, in this heart-centered space, in this space where we collectively come together to honor you, your goodness, and find you operating more and more fully within us. We recognize, oh God, that there is one power and one presence. God, the good, the omnipotent. And we're thankful that you, oh God, are the only authority in our lives. Thank you for Reverend Shaheerah, wherever she is, and for everybody who's a part of TLC. We thank you for Dr. Rose Moten and all of the brilliance with which you have infused into every area of her consciousness. And thank you for the blessing that we received through her on today. Thank you for using her as a mouthpiece to help us to truly bloom. We pray, God, that even as we're here during this next time together, we might have ears to hear. And that we not only have ears to hear, but that we have hearts and minds that serve as receptive soil, fertile ground for the planting of the divine ideas which you will be sowing into our consciousness on today. We pray your blessings upon each and every one of us. And we give great thanks that when this time together today has come to a close, we are made better for the time that we invested here with you, with one another today. And for this, we give great thanks in the name and in the nature of Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ. Ashe, Amen. So we've got a few announcements this morning. Greetings, Dr. Fabu. Look forward to hearing from you later this month. Reverend Bonnie. We've got a few announcements, and one of those is regarding the YouTube page. The YouTube page, I want to encourage everybody, if you've not done so already, to go do a search for Shaheerah Stevens on YouTube, subscribe to the page, and not only subscribe to the page, but also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified whenever we're going live. Okay, whenever there's new content that's being posted, you'll be getting an alert to be notified that TLC is going live, or that we're putting new content out there, all that's geared at helping you to transform your life. So again, you want to go to the YouTube page of Shaheerah Stevens, subscribe to it, like it, and share the content that you come across that you feel will be a blessing to somebody. In addition to that, we have coming up starting tomorrow and all throughout this week from June 5th through June 9th, excuse me, plug into the power of prayer. That's going to be on the Transforming Love Community conference call at 712-775-8968, code 750844. Again, that's going to be taking place each day this week, Monday through Friday at noon Eastern time. Now, also, we have going on tomorrow, going to be a couple different things going on. We've got the TLC prayer line that's taking place at noon, and that's going to be actually the same number, the 712-775-8968-75085 for Soak Mondays with Danny Stillwell. So that's been going on for a while now. Many of you all are familiar with that. That'll be taking place on Monday, and then throughout the rest of the week, there will also be the plug into the power of prayer. Okay, also on Wednesday, now, Wednesdays at 8 p.m., Rev goes live on YouTube. Now, she is on vacation right now, but hey, you might get a surprise. But again, remember that notification bell that I said to mention? That's added incentive for you to go, if you haven't already, and click that notification bell on the YouTube page. Because if she does go live, you'll be able to get that notification and see that, and be able to take advantage of the opportunity to soak in and absorb the insight, wisdom, and love that she's sharing. Okay. And you may want to make sure that you're getting a copy of your book, The Wealth of a Spiritual Woman, written by Rev. The cost of the book is $25. You can get it from the transforminglovecommunity.com webpage. And again, the price of the book is $25, and that actually includes the cost of the shipping. Okay. And this month, we're dealing with the theme Align and Allow. Align and Allow. We've got Dr. Rose Moten, who's sharing from the wealth of her insight and wisdom today. I'll be here with us next week, followed by Dr. Spencer, and then Dr. Fabu will be closing off the month of June with us. So again, next week I'll be here sharing when God works on your behalf. and look forward to that. I'm sure that it's going to be a blessing to everybody who's tuned in, as each Sunday this month will be, and each Sunday, whatever month it is, will be. And that pretty much wraps us up for the announcements. And now I have the wonderful and the distinguished honor of introducing our speaker for today, Dr. Rose Moten. Now, most of you all are familiar with Dr. Rose, and you've heard her, you've seen her on television, heard her on the radio, you've seen her on Facebook and on YouTube. She's a psychologist, author, speaker, life transformation coach, and founder of Bloom Transformation Center, which is a Detroit-based wellness center that blends traditional mental health services with metaphysical and holistic approaches. Dr. Rose has been featured both locally and nationally on television and radio and newsprint articles. Seeing her on Oprah Winfrey Show, the OWN Network, TEDx, read of her in the Chicago Sun-Times, Detroit Free Press, seen her on WXYZ, WDIV, and Fox 2 Detroit, just to name a few. During the COVID-19 pandemic, she was recognized by media outlets around the country as one of the top mental health experts, assisting others in navigating the many unforeseen mental health challenges that the pandemic presented. Dr. Rose's highly acclaimed book, Bloom, 7 Steps to Personal Transformation, provides a practical and effective blueprint for self-awareness, personal transformation, and mental and emotional wellness. She works with organizations and individuals all over the world, guiding them through their own growth and transformation, utilizing the concepts of Bloom. In addition to outpatient mental health and counseling services, Dr. Rose is the only mental health professional in Detroit offering the revolutionary trauma release training, or TRE, sound healing, gong meditation classes, and neurooptimal brain training. Dr. Rose Moten is transforming lives and inspiring others to live their lives in full bloom by discovering and aligning with their most authentic, most purposeful, and most purpose-filled selves. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to a few and present to most Dr. Rose Moten.
Well, good morning, Royce. Thank you so much for that introduction. I mean, in reality, I'm just a girl from the east side of Detroit, but I appreciate all of that wonderful, wonderful information that you just shared. And it's an honor. I want to first of all thank you for that introduction. Thank the Reverend Dr. Shaheerah for inviting me in. It's such an honor to be here with you all today. As it was mentioned, my goal is just to impart information and knowledge on individuals to help them live a more fulfilled life. I think living a fulfilled life and a happy life and a life where you feel in alignment so you can allow all the beautiful things in this human experience to be poured unto you. I think it's a right of all of us. And I'm a believer. I'm a believer that with the right tools, with the right information, with the right insight, we can build anything, even a better us. So today, when Reverend reached out to me and asked if I would give the message today, of course, I'm not going to hesitate. Anytime that I respect her so much, anytime she asks me to show up, I'm going to show up if it's in my capacity to do so. But I immediately thought what I want to share with you, and I couldn't help but to reflect back to a time many years ago when I first began doing small group coaching. And I had a group of women. It was probably about 20 women in this first group. This was many years ago. And I remember our first meeting together. They were told before we even gave introductions, before, we talked about what that coaching masterclass was going to consist of, they were given a simple assignment to take a little Post-it note and to think about what it is that they wanted to achieve. And at that time, it was a 9-month coaching series. And each of these individuals were, off in their own private area, writing their one word. They were given the assignment. This had to be one word that they would write down of what it is that they wanted to achieve. Now, of course, I'm assuming we're going to get words like more confidence, happiness, joy, the things that we basically would consider individuals would just gravitate toward if they're making this commitment, both a personal time commitment and financial commitment to participate in a coaching program. But to my surprise, when I asked each one of these individuals to take their little Post-it sticky note and stick it to the wall to the right of us so we could all see each other's words, I kid you not, 15 of those individuals had the exact same word down, and it was a word I was not even expecting. That word was freedom. And when you think about it, by all intents and purposes, everyone in that room at that time, they were free. They were free to come and participate in my coaching program. They were not in bondage. They were not imprisoned in any way. But what I soon realized from that experience and from the experience of all the clients that I'd seen even prior to that, that what most people, when they seek out therapy, what they were seeking was freedom from some sense of emotional, spiritual, or mental bondage that we don't see, but many people feel that they're in. So about 15 years ago, this was 10 years into my practice as a clinical psychologist, I developed a system. I developed a system of transformation that, based on not just my academic experience, my research, and my occupational experience as a clinical psychologist, but also based on my own personal experience, my own personal transformation, that I felt were very valid, effective, practical tools that individuals can use to help transform their lives, to help them align and allow, to help them get from where they are, which may be a place that does not feel good to them, to where they want to be, where we all deserve to be. And that's a place of being really plugged in and connected and honoring our true selves. So today, what I want to share with you all are the first 2 steps of that system. The first 2 steps: rediscovering you, that's step 1, and living in the now, which is step 2. And with the exploration of these 2 steps, it's my intent, it's my goal, it's my hope, it's my prayer that you all are able to gain some information, gain tools that you'll be able to use in your own lives, again, to get in alignment, because I'm a believer that once we get in alignment, and we'll talk about what alignment is, but we are able to allow all of those things, the blessings, the abundance, the prosperity, everything that's been wanting to enter our lives, but we've been our own barrier. Because again, even though we may have the freedom to move about this world, if we are not free in a sense, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, we are not allowing all the beautiful gifts, the prosperity and the abundance that awaits us to pour into our lives. So let's talk about the rediscovering of self. Step 1, rediscovering you. And as Royce mentioned, I actually did a TEDx on this, and it was called Rediscovering You, The Path to Authenticity. I was pretty young when I started my practice. I wasn't even quite 30. I received my master's degree at the age of, I believe it was about 26, and I went right into private practice at that time. And it didn't take long, within a few years, for me to realize that, most of the individuals coming to me, even though they were coming to me and they were reporting things such as depression or anxiety, these are the 2 most reported mental health impairments in our society. It didn't take long to find out that much of the depression or the anxiety, and we're not talking about clinical, where there's actually some chemical imbalance that's going on in the brain, but we're talking about just the individuals, most of us throughout life at times will feel some type of depression or anxiety. And it soon became apparent that the depression and the anxiety were just words that they could apply to what they were feeling. And it's not to negate that there were depression and anxiety there, but oftentimes what I soon discovered is that most of the individuals were not living a life that was consistent with their true selves. And so when we talk about rediscovering self, when I talk about step one and rediscovering you, I'm talking about how important it is for us before we go on any journey of transformation, before we can even align and allow, we must really do an honest, intentional evaluation of who we are. And for most people, before we even get an opportunity to discover who we are, we're being told at an early age who we should be or who we should not be. And when you think about it, think about your own life. Think about the things that maybe you were told you were too much of or not enough of. Maybe you were told you were too loud or not loud enough, or you were too sensitive or not emotional enough. The messages that we can get from our early childhood are, intended to be one of love and protection by our caregivers. But unfortunately, what many don't understand is that these types of messaging are very detrimental in us really getting in alignment and understanding who we are so we can live a life that is complementary to our true selves. So, very early on in my practice as well, I worked with a lot of adolescents, and I stopped working with adolescents early on as well because I would get parents that would come in and say, "Fix my child." And I'll say, "Fix your child. What's wrong with your child?" And what these parents often saw as the problem was this child was not like them. They navigated the world differently than their parents did when they were that age. And so for the parents, they felt if this child was not a mirror representation of them, then it had to be something wrong with them. They had to get this child in alignment with this parent's personality, so to speak. And I would often educate parents on, and this is something that most psychologists agree on, how all 8 billion people in this world that's walking this planet right now, we all fall into one of 4 different personality types. And our personality, this is the personality we're equipped with. This is our divine coding that's going to allow us to achieve whatever purposes we have in life. But again, if a caregiver does not understand or cannot relate to that particular personality, if it's not like theirs, oftentimes they are encouraging the child to veer away from that. So I educate my clients, I educate the individuals that I've seen all over the world on, first of all, understanding what their true personality type is. Because if you can have a firm understanding of who you are, you're able to live this life and navigate again without let me back up a little bit. I want to just talk about some things you can kind of even explore in yourself to see if you are navigating in your true personality type. So, if you are someone, and if you're watching this, you obviously have access to the internet. If you're someone and you're able to meet your basic needs, food, water, shelter, and safety, and you're able to pay your bills each month, and you have all those things that you were told, and we were all told early on in life that if we achieve, that we could live the American dream, so to speak, or we could have a good life. And if you have all these things in place, but there's still a sense of just disconnect or unfulfillment, then there's a very good chance that you are not living true to your personality type. And oftentimes, again, this boils down to us very early on in life not being given the permission. And I'd like to share even my own story as it relates to this. Now, I was one of those kids and I had a wonderful childhood. And it wasn't until the age of 12. I was a daddy's girl. I oftentimes talk about that. I was one of these, I tomboys, as they say. I mean, I was just that girl out there, just living her best life as just a carefree child. able to kind of explore the world like I wanted to explore it. I had parents that encouraged that, and it was a wonderful thing. But at the age of 12, my father suffered a massive stroke. He was just 36 at the time. And I went from being that daddy's girl to actually, along with my siblings and my mom, a caregiver. And so that personality that I had at a very early age of being carefree, of being this child, this explorative child who just wanted to see how things work, shifted instantaneously to one of being a caregiver, to being a nurturer. And for the next, from the age of 12 roughly to the age of 32, I operated outside of my true personality type. And I was making all types of advancements. I was still able to graduate high school, top of my class, go to college. And even though I had an unplanned pregnancy in college, I was still able to graduate college on time, top of my class, and have my PhD by the time I'm the age of 30. By the time of 29, I had my PhD. So here I am as a 30-year-old, now mom of three, with everything. I was told that if I achieved in life, I would be able to be happy. I had married my high school sweetheart. I had the house in the suburbs. I had the kids. I had the degree. I was building my career. But I could not understand why I still felt this enormous sense of a lack of fulfillment. And in working with clients and in doing my own self work, that's when the realization hit me that this lack of fulfillment was because I was not operating in my true capacity. I was no longer that carefree little girl that was able to explore the world. I was doing everything that I learned to do, as this caregiver and nurturer. And one thing I want you all to just keep in mind, and I want you to marinate on this. Those of you who may be operating outside of your true nature now, it doesn't mean you're not doing it well. Anything we do often enough, we normalize. Anything we do often enough, including how we navigate this world, including how we perceive ourselves, anything we do often enough, we normalize, we condition ourselves to do it, we do it well, and we assume that this is the way it's supposed to be done. But again, when you start to get honest with yourself and you do an intentional evaluation and you find out that even in the midst of living this American dream, or even in the midst of doing everything you were told you were supposed to do, and you have this sense of unfulfillment, then it's time. That's when the time has come for you to really, really get real about how true you are to yourself and to rediscover the truth of who you are. And so that began my journey. That began my journey of really just evaluating how the trauma of becoming a caregiver at a young age, the trauma of watching my father, who was once this very, presence larger than life, become someone that had to be cared for, that could not even meet his basic needs. How for so long I was able to kind of put that all by the wayside and keep moving forward, but not considering the impact that that had on me. And so the first step, again, of rediscovering you, and something I want to implore all of you to do, is to really evaluate, how are you navigating the world? One thing that you can consider that is oftentimes an indication that you are not navigating the world as your true self, believe it or not, is if you are highly critical of others. When those who are not operating life according to their true nature, their divine design, when they witness others who are doing that, there can be a high level of criticism with that. And that's often a trauma response because you feel you don't have the permission to do that for yourself. And so you have a lot of criticisms for others who are doing it. So that's one way that you can kind of look at that. But the devastation, again, of not living life as your true self is this just sense of unfulfillment. It's an inability to really connect and build healthy relationships with others. As I mentioned, it's the high criticism of others. So if you can go back to a time in your life where you felt your most authentic self, and for some of us that's very early on in childhood. For some of us, you may not even be able to remember that time. And that's when I say, even ask folks who've known you your whole life, because that can be valuable information. But if you can go back to those times, or that time that you recognize and you felt plugged in, you felt connected, you felt like you were your most authentic self, then let that be your starting point. Let that be the guide for you to say, this is where I am now, but this point here, or these feelings, these sensations, perceptions that I had at this time, is what I want to get back to. So it's so important, again, because when I think about all my clients over these 25 years that I've been in practice, and I've treated someone in basically every decade of life over these 25 years. I've had clients well into their 80s who are still struggling with trying to make sense of life, and trying to make sense of how they can feel plugged in, because it's never too late. I tell people all the time, when you're in your 50s and your 60s and your 70s, and you're feeling like, okay, the time has passed. What's the point of me even trying to achieve this level of fulfillment that has eluded me my whole life? I tell you, it's never too late for you to make the shift in your life that's needed. It's also important for us, because I'm a believer of this collective unconscious too, is that when we heal, we not only heal, we help the generations before us to heal, we help the generations after us to heal, because that's part of just this whole collective consciousness of understanding self, and understanding that it's everyone's divine design and divine right to live a life according to who they are. So what does it look like when you are living life in accordance to your true self? It looks like you have this just sense of authenticity and this unapologetic existence that's just infectious to everyone around you. Your ability to be your true self, regardless of who you are around, and to celebrate the authenticity of others. The ability to discard that critique and that high criticism you may have of others is very important as well. So I want to move on to the title of what this whole speech is about, shedding that when-tality mentality. And that's going on to step 2 of living in the now. So when I personally made the decision to really get true with myself and plug back into the truth of who I am, and to evaluate my life and make some tough decisions, including, divorcing and becoming basically a single parent day in and day out to 4 children when I did ultimately divorce. And there was nothing easy about that decision at all, but there was a knowing that I had internally that if I did not make the decision to be true to who I was, that there was no way possible I was going to live a fulfilled life. And if I was not going to honor myself by insisting I live a life of fulfillment and a life of authenticity and a life of being plugged in, then it was going to have a detrimental impact on those 4 children I was raising as well. It's so important for us to be examples for not just our children, but as I mentioned, the generations that come after us, all around, to really just know that we have that right to plug in the true essence of who we are. So when I talk about the living in the now, and I bring up the example of being a mother to 4 children, people oftentimes, if those of you who are raising children now, the day in and day out responsibilities of that, and how difficult it can be. And now with 4 children all out of the home, being an empty nester, and it's a wonderful thing. But people oftentimes will come and they'll ask me, they say, how did you do it? How were you able to, manage 4 children, building a practice, working, without basically losing your mind? And I just remember one of the tools I used at that time that I knew was important for me is that I could not think about everything I had to do in a day. And what do I mean by that? When I would start my day, if I thought about all the responsibilities I had in that day, everything I had to do, and all the unknowns that come in inevitably when you're raising children, when you're running a business, I would have literally stayed in the bed and covered my head with covers. I learned then, very under my own experience, that the only way I was going to be able to navigate my life and navigate it successfully was to live in the now, the here and now. And that's what I want to discuss and share with you. Step 2, as far as living in the now. Again, when patients come into me and they report they're depressed or they're anxious, and the further that I would investigate that, it would become very evident that those individuals that reported depression tended to be individuals that ruminated or focused on the past. So for these individuals, it was, if we could only go back to a better time, or if only that had not happened. This past focused thinking created just this sense of depression that would just permeate with an individual. And then this future focused thinking: what if I'm not able to take care of these children by myself? What if I'm not able to pay my mortgage next month? What if I never meet that person of my dream? This future focused thinking created anxiety. We live in a society now, and I share this in my book, Bloom 7 Steps of Personal Transformation, that I believe the biggest threat to our well-being is this inability to stop and get out of this loop and pattern of pathological thinking. Pathological thinking, thinking, when you think about it, was intended. It's a beautiful gift we have as human beings, this gift of being able to think, to use this prefrontal cortex. The ability as human beings to be able to think is what has allowed us to even create things such as the internet, so you can watch me live right now. But we have taken this purposeful gift of thinking, which was intended to only be for planning, for strategy and execution. We've taken this gift of thought and we've turned it against us, because most people are spending all their waking hours in this perpetual just state of thinking. And it's not for planning. They're not thinking to strategize. They're not thinking to execute. They're thinking about the argument, again, that happened yesterday. Or they're thinking about what happened decades ago that they wish had not happened before. Or they're thinking about the times where, before the parent got ill, or the time before life became so challenging for you. And all that past focused thinking, again, creates this sense of depression. And then you have individuals who are spending the majority of their waking time obsessing about the what ifs about the future. Or they are waiting for this designated time that they've set up in their head, that once they get there, they're going to be able to have and connect with this sense of fulfillment. So it's the I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when all my bills are paid off. I'll be happy when I meet the person of my dreams. I'll be happy when, we can fill in the blank, because there's endless examples of, and I'm sure many of you have even verbalized that. And I call this the when-tality mentality. The individuals who are unable to understand that, the beauty is not in the destination. The beauty is not in the when I get there. The beauty of life is in the journey and being present in the journey. So when I discuss shattering this when-tality mentality, so we can live a life in full bloom, so we can live a life in alignment and allowing the things to come in, this is one of the most crucial steps that I have witnessed individuals being able to transform their lives, just being able to be present. And that's one of the reasons that I offer many of the services that I do here, because it helps individuals to get away from this tendency to be too future focused, or this tendency to be past focused. You'll be amazed at how often people are able to, once they tune in into the beauty of the present and since the here and the now, they're able to start shedding these depressive tendencies or this anxious mindset that they may have. And it's a lot easier than you think, because our default setting is one of being present. Those of you who may have animals at home, I want you to even consider this. Animals, we are humans are a form of animals as well, but like I said, we have this beautiful gift as human beings of having this advanced brain that allows us to think. Because I guarantee you, those of you with animals at home, they are not there worrying about the future or obsessing about the past. They're in the present. That's why they're so tuned in. There was actually a study after the tsunamis of 2005 that really devastated South Asia, that they were surprised how there were so many animals that they did not even find in the ruins, like, animal remains. But also townspeople reported how prior to the tsunami, days before, they noticed animals like moving, uphill to higher elevations. And I use that as an example because one of the things that the ability to be present, which most animals are, in this present state, allows us to really tune into a world where we are tuned into a knowing of things that can even protect us. When we are too past focused, we are too future focused, we're not able to tune into our intuition. We're not able to understand and respond and utilize that gut, that gut instinct that we have that is there to protect us. Now, what causes this? What causes people to be so future focused? What causes people to be so past focused? And what research is increasingly showing is that the inability to be present for many of us is a trauma response. It's a trauma response. It's based on our experiences early on in life that we may have had, whatever those experiences may be, adverse childhood experiences or experiences in early adulthood, experiences that we may have had where we conditioned ourselves. Like I said, anything we do often enough, we do it well, to not be present for whatever reason. Our brains, and I want to talk a little bit about trauma because that's some of the work that I do, and a lot of the work I do is as a trauma expert, is to help people overcome, first of all, to recognize that they are operating from a traumatized state and to overcome that traumatized state. Because that inability to be present, the over-reliance on the future, the rumination on the past, is in and of itself a trauma response. And I'm going to give you guys just something to think about personally, because I want you to ask yourself if you could possibly be operating from one of these states that is not beneficial to your ability to just align and allow. So it's very possible that you're someone that's operating in a non-present, in a distracted future focus, or a ruminative past focus state of being if you have an inability to just sit still with yourself. If you are always picking up your phone and always checking social media, if you have a difficulty being alone, if you are easily triggered emotionally by others, these are all things that could be very indicative of you not being able to be present, to tap into the beauty of the here and the now. One thing I see people oftentimes do, and I hear clients say this all the time, couples especially, they will come, and if they're having difficulty, and they'll say to me in their relationship, and I've heard it more than once. Well, they'll share that their partner, they say, I like my partner when we're on vacation, but it's like when we come home, they're a completely different person. And so they'll say, I like the vacation husband, or I like the vacation wife. When you are unable to be present, you don't sometimes give yourself permission to even be present until you allow yourself to go on vacation, so to speak. So you may have heard people, and I see it all the time on social media, who will go on vacation and then on the way back, they'll say back to reality. And that's one thing you'll never hear me say, even when I'm coming back from some of the beautiful places I've visited, I'll never say back to reality, because that's almost just even putting it out there that your belief is once you get back to your daily life, you're not able to allow yourself to be present like you were when you were on vacation. Something about being on vacation, the one time a year, maybe some of us 2 times a year, maybe some people it's every few years that you allow yourself to go on vacation. But just think about that mentality, that the belief is I can only allow myself to be present, to be tuned in when I'm outside of my everyday environment. When you think about vacation, think about your last vacation. You were tuned into the environment, to the setting, to your sensations, perceptions, the feelings. It felt good. And there's something about that belief that you can only get that when you are not in your day-to-day activity, that you've conditioned yourself to believe is something that you cannot be present in, that you won't allow yourself to just be present and allow the beauty of our everyday life and our surroundings to really just fulfill us in our existence. So our default setting, as I said, should be in a present, mindful state. When we are present, we are tuned into the rhythm and the presence of God that exists and is accessible to us all. I really started to notice this inability to be present, and this just human tendency for us, because it is our default setting, for us to seek out things that make us feel conscious and plugged in and in the present state. And like I mentioned, vacation is one of those things that people plug into, because it's like, okay, I can be present, I can be plugged in, and it feels good because it's our default setting. So I oftentimes, when I'm doing a class, I use an analogy, and I use a circle as kind of just a visual for that. So I want you guys to even imagine like this huge just pie chart, if you want to speak, so to speak. And so the majority of our existence is intended to be one where we are present, as I mentioned before. And this is where we are tuned into our sensations, our perceptions, and our feelings. And in this pie chart, thinking is supposed to be just a small portion of our daily existence, of our consciousness, so to speak. And thinking, as I mentioned, to execute, to plan, to strategize, so we can create, so we can expand, so we can grow. And the rest of our existence is supposed to be plugged in. And, what am I feeling now? What am I seeing now? What am I sensing now? And this is what allows us to balance our physiological state. This is what allows us to just be plugged in. As I mentioned, this is what allows us to strengthen that intuitive sense. And because we flipped the script and we've made the majority of our daily existence one of thinking, what happened yesterday, what may happen next week with your boss, because we've shifted that, we are really starved as just a society of being just tuned in. And this is where all the gifts and the beauty and the wonder of life exists. And as a effect, we are so easily triggered by things because we are not allowing ourselves to even calm our physiological state by not being in this perpetual sense of thinking. I'm reminded of when I was doing my doctoral internship. And I was sharing this story with someone the other day. I waited because of, life and everything going on. I waited too late to actually get the location that I wanted for my doctoral internship. And I ended up in the one place I did not want to be. And this place was actually a residential drug treatment facility. And at the time, again, I'm in my mid 20s. I had so many biases. I had so much judgment because remember, as I mentioned, I was not operating according to my true self. I was still operating in that traumatized state as the, little girl that had to become a caregiver. And because of my judgment, because of my belief system, at this time I had a belief that, substance abuse, addiction, I had a belief that that was just a sign of low willpower and no motivation, right? Couldn't be further from the truth, right? And Muhammad Ali is the one that says, a man at 50 that still believes and thinks the same that did at 25 has wasted 25 years of their life. And I oftentimes chuckle when I think of that quote because it definitely describes where I was at that age. Someone who just had this very critical sense and this judgmental sense of what this population of individuals that had substance addiction, what their issue was. If they could just have enough willpower, if they, just motivate themselves more. And I'm a believer that God puts you exactly where you're supposed to be. So although I felt like, it was a punishment for me to have this site as my doctoral internship. It was the best thing that could have ever happened to me because that I realized was where I really started to challenge a lot of the misconceptions and the beliefs that I had developed as a result of me not being true and authentic to who I was. It soon became apparent with this population and the individuals I would treat. This was a women's facility. That the addiction, the substance addiction, was again a trauma response, and it was. And I want you guys to hear this because it amazed me. I remember it was the drug addiction was an attempt to be present. And let me just explain what I mean by that. When an individual, which most of these individuals, every person I've ever worked with in my life as a psychologist over the 25 years that have struggled with any type of addiction, it's usually rooted in some type of trauma. And this is what this experience taught me, because all of those individuals that were residing in this facility, when we sat in group, when I had individual sessions with them, all I'm hearing is stories about trauma, stories about childhood neglect, stories about physical and sexual abuse, stories about absent or unemotionally available parents, stories where these individuals at a very early age in life had to find a way to even disconnect from their reality because their reality was too painful to stay plugged into for any length of time. And so our brains have this wonderful, wonderful ability when we are in a state of being traumatized, or we're in a state or an existence or a reality or in an environment that is not conducive to our most healthy selves. We have this ability, our brains do, to disconnect from that environment to protect us, to protect our emotions, to protect, all the emotional pain that a person is going through at that time. And so this population I was dealing with, I soon realized was a population of individuals who were using substances as a way, again, to not connect with the reality of their past. But when I had one person say something to me, it was really when kind of the light bulb went out and the light bulb went on, and I had this realization and this epiphany about this population that I was dealing with. So much so that I decided to even do my dissertation on the effects of emergent spirituality and addiction recovery. One of the participants one day, as we were finishing up her session and she was walking out the door, and she paused and she turned around and she looked at me and she said, "Do you want to know one of the reasons that I, get high? One of the reasons that I use drugs?" And I said, "Sure, And so she tells me, she says, "When I was under the influence, when I could shut off all the memories of all the atrocious things that happened to me, I felt closest to God." What I interpreted this person saying is that when they were able to not be tethered to the flashbacks, the memories of their past, when they were able not to be tied to the anxieties of their future, when they were able to be for this person, they found their sense of presence, unfortunately, through getting, inebriated and being under the influence. But that was the only time they could feel they could shut all those things from the past or all those anxieties from the future off and be present and be tuned in. And the realization came, the epiphany, as I mentioned, came that this is why people choose activities that gives them a false sense of mindfulness. When I have people come to the center and after the sound healing, I've had individuals who are former addicts. I've had individuals say, "I feel so present now. I'm able to stay tuned in to my environment. I'm able to really pay attention and understand, what's around me and not have to have this altered state of consciousness." So, what we all are seeking, regardless of what your background trauma may have been, what we all are seeking, we're seeking to just be more plugged into the here and now. And how do we do that? And so, I want to share even some tools that you can use to help you just align yourself back to the beauty of the now. With the clients that I've worked with, the coaching clients, one of the amazing things that they have found is when they start practicing some of these tools, when they start challenging just some of the ways that they've navigated life that have, they believe, work for them, but has not resulted in the life that they desire for themselves. And they start incorporating many of these tools, such as the rediscovery of self and learning to live in the now. They are amazed at how almost with less effort than they ever imagined, the things that they've been working hard to achieve starts just flowing into their life effortlessly, And I tell them it's because what we've done for so long, many of us who have this over reliance on past focused thinking or future focused thinking, and we're not plugging into the here and now, we create a barrier for ourselves. And I use the analogy oftentimes of like when you go to the grocery store, and all of us have had the experience in the past. I know a lot of the stuff is self checkout now, so it kind of, it dates itself, this analogy that I'm giving you guys. But you remember a time where you've gone and maybe that long piece, that long roll of foil kind of gets caught on that conveyor belt. And all the groceries you're putting up are just stacking up against that long roll of foil, and nothing's moving. The conveyor belt's moving, but nothing's making it down to the cashier to ring it up. And it's when we're able to kind of lift up that barrier. And in this case, in this analogy I'm using, it's the foil, where we're able to lift up that barrier. All of the groceries now flood in. So for my clients, I use that analogy because the inability to be present, the things we've normalized, the behaviors that we've normalized and not been able to see how they are detrimental to us, have served as a barrier to all the beautiful things, the prosperity, the abundance that wants to enter our lives. It wants to do it. But again, we've created this barrier. And once we become aware of it, and once we give ourselves permission to start challenging some of the things that we've held as truth for so long and navigating in a different way, it's almost like effortlessly that barrier that you've created, even unconsciously, is lifted, and all of that stuff that's been wanting and waiting to pour into your life, to fill your life with the beauty that is right there on the other side, it starts to pour in. The tools you can use, and part of being present, I'm holding up my hand because sometimes as simple as tuning into your senses, tuning into your senses. So as simple as when you are going about your day and you notice that your thought is in a place that's not conducive to being present minded, and it's not about strategy or executing or planning, you can immediately say, what am I seeing? Like right now, all of you, even in the room you're in now, look around and just tune into something in that room. Just that act of tuning in and paying attention is an act of being mindful. What are you feeling? Right now, I feel the cool breeze of the air condition on my arm. What are you sensing? What are when you're eating? I talk about this in my book, Bloom, as well. We live in a society with many of the ailments that we have, the chronic illness that we have. A lot of that is even attributed to this obesity epidemic that we have in this country. And so over the years and working with clients and working with mindfulness, I've looked at even how food and our act of eating food is an attempt to be mindful. So just think about, some of you may be eating your breakfast now, but just think about when you are eating food. When you're eating food, for most of us, we're present. People call it emotional eating, but I want to even challenge that because I don't think overeating is emotional eating necessarily. I think when we find individuals and we found ourselves in this state of overeating, it's really our attempt, as I mentioned, to be present. Because when we are eating, when we are tuning into the temperature of the food, the texture of the food, the taste of the food, when we are really tuning into that, we are in our present state. And so what happens when we finish that plate of food? We're not necessarily hungry anymore. But what we are hungry for is to get back to that feeling of being present. So we go and let's get another plate. Again, not because we're hungry, because we are hungry for being present and being mindful. And we have erroneously associated that act of eating, to achieving that feeling that you have when you are present. Same with the client that I mentioned who said she felt closest to God when she was consuming drugs, because she has erroneously associated that sense of presentness that she has when she's able to shut off the thoughts of the past with using that substance. So think about what a transformative existence for ourselves we could create when we are able to find healthy, effective ways to tune in to our here and now. That's not going to be detrimental to us. That's not going to cause, health problems because of drugs or, overeating or, for some people they can use, it's just all types of different activities that we can plug into that we need to recognize why we're plugging into it. And it's not necessarily because you just like to eat or, because you're a drug addict or whatever it may be. It's because you're really wanting and desiring on a basic, level to be present and to be tuned into your environment. So being very conscious and intentional and deliberate every day about what is running through your mind. And anytime, if you've been a person that, and I think we've all done that, you've driven past your exit, a familiar exit on the expressway. That's an indication that you're not present at that time. Because your mind is somewhere else for you to miss that exit. I give people the assignment oftentimes of, even when you are on your way home from work, or you're on your way home from a familiar route that you know how to get there, to turn off your radio and to tune into your environment, and to look and say, okay, what is it that I'm seeing? I guarantee you'll be able to see things that you didn't even realize were in your environment. The color of doors, that you never realized. Just beautiful pieces of art or sculptures or building architecture that you never paid attention to, because we've been so consumed in this state of being present focused, or I should say future focused or past focused. And as I want you all, if nothing else, to take from today's discussion, is the beauty that comes when we do plug in to the here and now. The beauty that comes when we are able to allow ourselves to align with the rhythm that God provides all around us, the rhythm in our environment, the sense of knowing that you will have as you increase your intuition by being more present in your environment. Just know that there's no future in the past, and there's no past in your future. The past is just that, to help us understand. And the future, when we can allow ourselves to release attachment to outcome and to understand that if we adopt a reality and we adopt an existence that really plugs us into the here and now, that we will have a firm belief, an unshakable belief, that everything is in divine order, and we will be aligned, and we will allow all the beauty, the prosperity, and abundance that awaits us in life to flow in. Thank you guys for this time. I welcome any questions you may have, any of your own experiences and any of the things that we've talked about. And it's been my honor, and I'm honored that you have allowed me to share this time with you on this Sunday morning. And I wish you all a beautiful, beautiful, prosperous week where you're able to be plugged in, you're able to be present, and you're able to reap the enormous rewards that come with that. Thank you.